All right, let's talk about maybe the single most terrifying design challenge anyone has ever come up with. I mean, think about it. A project that has to last longer than our entire species has been around, all to send one simple, crucial message: stay away. Let's get into it. Okay, so picture this. It's thousands of years in the future, you're an explorer, and you come across this place. It's a huge artificial landscape just covered in these enormous concrete spikes. They're jagged, they're sharp, and they're just clawing at the sky. The whole vibe is just wrong. It feels unnatural, deeply menacing. And you'd be asking yourself the same thing we're asking right now. Why in the world would humanity ever build something like this?
So what is it? Some kind of weird superweapon? The ruins of an ancient temple to some, I don't know, god of pain? Or is it something else? A desperate warning basically being screamed across a massive gap in time. Well, the answer, it's way more complex and way more important than you might think.
Here's the truth. That horrifying landscape, it's actually a proposed solution to a very modern problem. It's how we might mark a permanent burial ground for high-level nuclear waste. Yeah, we're talking about a poison that stays deadly on a timescale that makes all of human history look like a blink of an eye. 4.5 billion years. Let that sink in. That staggering number is the half-life of uranium-238, which is a major part of this waste. To put that into perspective for you, that's about how old our planet is. The entire planet. We've literally created a poison that will last as long as the Earth has even been around. It's mind-boggling. And this timeline really drives the point home, doesn't it? See that tiny, tiny little sliver right there? That's all of recorded human history, everything. And yet the waste we've made in just the last 100 years or so, it's going to stay lethally radioactive for over 100,000 years, at a minimum. So, okay, this gets us to the absolute heart of the problem. How in the world do you communicate danger across tens of thousands of years? How do you leave a warning sign that someone, or something, will understand when our languages, our symbols, everything we use to talk to each other are totally gone? Our usual methods, they're just not going to cut it. You know, there's actually a name for this. Experts call it language rot. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's the totally natural, inevitable decay of meaning over time. Languages change, symbols get new meanings, whole cultures just disappear. A skull and crossbones might mean danger to us, but to our distant descendants, it could mean nothing. Or worse, it could mean something totally different, like treasure here. Want a perfect example? Take a look at this. On the left, that's the opening to the epic poem Beowulf. It was written in Old English just 1,000 years ago. Can you read it? Probably not. To most of us, it's just gibberish. Now imagine that same amount of change, but multiply it by 10 or 100. That's the scale of the challenge we're talking about here.
So, right, if words are going to fail and our symbols are going to be forgotten, then what do? How do you send this critical message so far into the future? How do you possibly design a warning that is immune to being lost in translation? And that brings us right back to where we started. Remember that menacing landscape? Well, that's the answer. The proposed solution isn't to write a message, it's to build one. The idea is to create what you could call an architecture of fear, a warning that doesn't need your brain to understand it. It bypasses language and speaks right to your gut, to those deep primal instincts. The first big idea behind this is something called biomimicry, basically copying nature. Because if you think about it, nature already has a universal language for don't touch, right? Think about the thorns on a plant, the spikes on a porcupine, the jagged edges of a sharp rock. All over the world, living things instinctively know that shapes like that mean danger. And this thinking leads to some pretty wild design concepts. You have the Landscape of Thorns, a huge field of massive concrete spikes. You have spike fields designed to make the ground just impossible to walk on. There are proposals for giant, jagged earthworks that make it look like the earth itself has been torn open and is angry. And even these enormous, forbidding blocks of black stone that would get incredibly hot in the sun. The whole point is to make the place look physically painful to even be near. But it goes even deeper than that. The second principle is called psychological deterrence. This is about more than just looking sharp and spiky. It's about creating a place that feels fundamentally, viscerally wrong. An environment that gives you this deep sense of unease, of dread, a feeling in your bones that tells you, I should not be here, I need to get out right now. Okay, but there's a huge potential problem with this whole plan. It's often called the Indiana Jones paradox. What happens if instead of making people afraid, this giant, bizarre, obviously man-made thing just makes them curious?
This is the core issue of what's called anti-curiosity. I mean, look at human history. When do we build massive things that last forever? We do it to mark places that are important. A pharaoh's tomb, a great temple, a place of honor. A future civilization might see all these spikes and strange shapes and not think danger. They might think, wow, something really, really valuable must be buried here.
So, to try and fight this, the designers came up with a message they plan to carve into the site in as many languages as possible. And it is so stark and so direct, it's the exact opposite of what you'd expect to find on a monument. It basically says, this is not a place of honor. No great deed happened here. There was nothing of value here. It's an attempt to just shout go away as clearly as they possibly can. You know, when you get down to it, this whole project forces us to think about our place in the grand scheme of things, in deep time. We are the ancestors now, and dealing with this poison, making sure it doesn't harm the countless generations that come after us, that might just be the biggest responsibility, the final, most important job of the atomic age. And that leaves us with this one huge, ultimate question. It's a question about design, about morality, about imagination. When the very people you're trying to protect will be more alien to you than the ancient Egyptians are to us today, how do you possibly warn a future that you cannot even begin to imagine?